I know Rachel was asking as well about relating some of the technical points in the drills that you're looking at to the technical excellence framework. So I suppose as you go through some of the others, good to relate the two things.
So there you're looking at body position, you're looking at arm movements, you're looking at foot traveling backwards, you're looking at the high knee position, you're looking at the active foot contact, the foot being dorsiflexed. As you go through the technical excellence framework, and I haven't got it in front of me, so it'd be me playing off memory. As you go through, you will be able to sort of pick out and say, well, that fits in there, that fits in there. There's a real active foot contact. That foot's tight. It's dorsiflex, whatever word you want to use, but the foot's tight. There's a reaction off the ground. We've got the foot traveling back, so it's landing under the center of mass. It's all the stuff we talked about at the start relates to those drills, hopefully.
We know most great sprinters have issues in their technique. Who would you select as your model to show perfection? There's no such thing.
No.
In my book.
Well, we were looking at Ball, weren't we, and saying there's stuff wrong there. You look at Powell, there's stuff wrong there. Yeah. Powell moves well, but I tend to pick.
My one for that is Carmelita Jetta.
Yeah,
I think she's the best by a country mile.
Yeah, so I tend to pick different videos for what I'm trying to show the athletes, and have a huge range of videos. And I'll say, well, starts, look at this. Powell's starts are really good. Look at this, and I'll have different videos to show different things. But yeah, like Mike said, there's stuff to change on everybody, which is why we're here as coaches.
Does the foot naturally move backwards, negative foot speed, when
No.
the thigh whips down from the hip? Therefore, work on the thigh hip generating that negative foot speed. What's your thoughts?
Yeah.
You're whipping the hip down.
If you whip the hip down,
working on that to actually generate that.
Not. I will try it because I've not sort of given them that cue. I don't know whether you have. I talk about the foot hammering down and the foot coming backwards, but I don't talk about the thigh. And certainly younger athletes, I think they will still. The foot doesn't naturally come back because the thigh's coming down. You quite often see a few of them, the thigh coming down, but them actually reaching out for the track, thinking they're creating a longer stride. I've not tried that cue. I will try it with one or two of them, but no, I tend to talk about the foot coming back because the foot coming back will bring the thigh down anyway. And personal thing, the thigh coming down, quite a few of them have the thigh coming down, but still let the foot get away from them. So that's where I talk about the foot coming back, not getting away from them, the foot being under control as it comes, as the leg comes down, getting that foot back underneath them. And that's why you use that cue. But I might give that a go. I will write that down and I might give them that cue and see if it works.
Okay. And what about what's the benefit of having your arms above your head?
Benefit of there is it really gets them to thinking about elongating the core. And it really makes them control through the core. So what they tend to do is have a stick. The junior coaches have given them, all the kids, the younger kids, tiny little sticks that are just the width that they want. And then as they go into a run, they'll drop it down and take it into a run. The old ones are a bit more controlled, and I'm going to whack somebody next to them with a pole. And it really elongates the core. So it's a focus for elongating the core before they start and a focus for them holding it. And I've found that doing that is something I nicked off Jonas from something he was doing with his athletes. and everything's nicked off somebody else, just about. I think there's one thing in here that I haven't nicked, but it's something I took off Jonas, where he was using it to really get the athletes to think about elongating through the core to control the core, and then he'd build it up and take the sticks away, but they already had that pattern of core control into the brains.
And there's a question here from Liz, who's actually an osteopath, about do you do any foot strengthening awareness?
Yep, do lots of foot strengthening, lots of barefoot stuff. In fact, that last video, they had shoes on there. They'd done a load of barefoot stuff there on the grass. We do a lot of barefoot stuff. I try and get them to walk around home without trainers on. Just to build up that foot strength, absolutely vitally important part of the drills. Even in winter, yes, it's in trainers, but they will do some stuff where they're coming onto the heel, up onto the foot and hold it. They'll do some foot stuff where they're stepping over the toes, but coming right up onto the toe and stepping through, so that there's some foot strengthening control there. But we do quite a lot of barefoot work. I would love to have an indoor track where we can do more, but unfortunately, track I'm based at is on the edge of Liverpool, and you get all the kids in there smashing glass and things. So when we do it, I try and make sure it is fairly safe, and I'd like to do a lot more of that, but I try and get them to do that sort of stuff at home on top of whatever else we do. So we've done, so what happens at the front? We have done some of the ground contact stuff. So that's sort of one of the sets of drills I do. The next set I do is recovery of the leg, and I'll quite often bring these two together, especially when we're doing longer runs. So recovery of the leg, we saw previously, the recovery takes place with a very slight bend into it. It doesn't fully extend at the rear. The reason for that is a fully extended leg is a lot harder to recover than something that has a slight flexion in it. So you may get a very, very slight benefit in power production, but it's negated by the length of time it then takes to recover it. You want to minimize rear mechanics. There's a great presentation, I'd like to say, it was me, on Athletics Hub on rear side versus front side mechanics. And the two do go together. There has to be an element of rear side mechanics, but you want to, minimize rear side mechanics and maximize front side mechanics. Recovery and toe off to max flexion we've already looked at, is really, really quick. And interestingly, this was a really hard thing for me to get my head around. The recovery from toe off to max flexion is actually longer for better world-class athletes than it is for poor world-class athletes. So somebody who perhaps makes a semi-final in the Olympics has faster time from toe off to max flexion than somebody who's going to win a medal in the Olympics. And the reason for this is you look at it, you think that doesn't make sense, because surely if it takes them long to recover, the other person's going to get more runs through. But the reason is the person who has the better athlete, who has the longer time from toe off to knee up, is actually getting themselves into a better position where they can create more power. So they get into a higher position where they can then accelerate the leg back, create more power, which actually then reduces the ground contact time and maximizes the force they produce off the ground. So actually, they're taking a bit longer to get through. Again, tiny bit of a second, but they're then able to accelerate the leg back further and actually then really work that ground contact. So the ground contact's faster and they're producing massive forces compared to the other athletes off the track. Correct positioning is vital. I don't know whether anybody coaches disability athletes. I do a lot of work with CP amputee athletes, and and we really work on the positioning for them. Is correct positioning is absolutely vital. To get that leg to recover that quickly, you need everything to fire, and you need the real fast sort of muscles that will spring that leg through to actually fire. And you need the hip flexors firing along with the other chains, but the hip flexors are the first thing to really start to pull that leg through. And they only work when they're actually turned on and the hips are turned on. So we do a lot of work about positioning of the hips, not being sort of lent too far forwards, but position of the hips. So the hips are really stable, are tucked under, not tucked forwards, but tucked under so that they're flat. So they can basically feel some tightness at the top of the leg so that leg will fire through on the recovery. So looking at that, you can see here, poor athlete is actually 200s faster for the recovery from toe off to knee flexion than the good world-class athletes. And that's sort of, as we discussed, and it's that sort of detail I think as coaches we sort of need to get into and need to think about if we're going to understand drills and really understand how force is produced and how people move. And it's sort of looking at those sort of things and thinking about it and understanding that will really get you to be able to sell this sort of stuff across to your athletes. So the progression on these drills is on all the drills through the recovery is still rapid contact, fast recovery of the foot, and keeping the foot tight on contact. The foot should be traveling back and underneath the center of mass still, and then vertical forces are produced. So the sort of stuff, so the base stuff we did earlier still applies. We're just changing the focus on what we're looking at. So the drills I do on this are over the ankle, through the calf, over the knee, taking all of these into a run. So the over the knee is pretty much the sort of proper way to do the old heel flicks, but we build up into those and recover those. So I've got a few videos of these. So just over the ankles, just tightly movements, and you'll see Harry actually bounces into all of his drills. So he'll actually bounce into them so the focus is still that really fast active contact. So it's a quick bang, 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 and then into it. So the focus is still an active foot contact, and I try and get the vast majority of them doing that just to get them thinking we don't forget about the contact. So just over the ankles, foot traveling back, and still a really reactive contact off. So we'll take that a bit further, build that up into a run. Through the calves, play that again. Just coming a slightly bit higher, bit of a bigger range of movements. There's things I'd like to change here. You'll pick them out when we do the starts, but there's things I would like to change. And there's a few simple cues that you'll pick up as we go along. So again, stepping over through the calves, keeping that foot nice and tight, actually trying to recover as quickly as possible, bringing the foot back, and then actually trying to step over his knees, but foot comes up to the bum, but it's actually really recovering off. You don't see that leg totally elongating at the back. You see it slightly bent, recovering through that foot, really stepping over the knee. And we end up in a high knee position. And then the focus is still that foot coming back and react off the track. So we land onto the foot. We'd have a look at some of these in slow motion and look at that. Are there any more questions, Mike?
Yeah, I've got a question. What cue do you give once foot comes through, either over ankle, calf or knee? Is it to step down or claw back?
Claw back. Step down to me is, I just call, I'll shout at them, foot back, foot back, foot back, foot back. It's a foot back action rather than a step down. Step down to me makes them think about, and again, everyone has different cues. I love asking coaches, what cue do you use? And they very rarely give them out because it's very individual, but a step down means you're stepping down from where you are rather than thinking about getting a foot back. And it's, the biggest fault with the vast majority of sort of junior sprinters, junior runners, sort of people running out on the roads, you see, is the foot goes away and they step down onto it, fall down onto it, rather than thinking about that travel back and that foot coming back. So just going back to that golden position, toe off, knee up, foot coming back, 33 thousandths of a second, incredibly fast. We really need to think about how we set the athletes up, the movements for that. So the upper leg flexion drills, that's basically the time from toe off up to upper leg flexion, incredibly fast. The athlete needs to be set up to achieve this, allowing the hip flexors to fire. Within reason, the higher the knee position, the more power an athlete can produce. So, we don't want the knee up here because that would just be silly. And it's finding what works with your athletes, but, it's somewhere just under 90 degrees. If we can see the golden position there, it's coming up to about 85. And then that allows them to really accelerate the foot back. I talk to the athletes a lot about movement. I talk to them about other sports, what makes a golfer hit a ball a long way. What makes a footballer kick a ball really well? What makes, and it's all the speed of movement at contact. So this is all about getting into a position where we can really accelerate the lower limb so that foot hits the track as fast as possible, because the faster it hits it and the shorter amount of time something will pick up on, it hits it for, the more force and power we produce. And again, Mike said, and I said it is actually in here, as long as everything else is in the correct position, as long as the athlete can control that power, doesn't collapse, and if you see your athlete's collapse, you might want to reduce something to reduce the power. That will reduce contact time. Should have changed that from should to reduce contact time. So as long as they're in the right position and can control that power, you'll find a really fast contact, which creates huge amounts of force. And that's sort of, to me, the golden sort of thing of sprinting that we want to get out. So,
Graham, Graham, you were on about sayings earlier on. I think my favourite one ever is you can't fire a cannon from a canoe.
Yeah, I've used that one, Mike.
Yeah.
Yeah, you fire a cannon from a canoe, what's going to happen? It just flies backwards in the water because there's no support, there's no control there. So yeah, no, I've used that one with our lot. So I've picked that one up and used it. Don't you worry. So yeah, to increase speed, an athlete must increase force to the ground in the appropriate direction and do so over increasingly shorter periods of time. And that's what makes your athletes better and faster. They must minimize horizontal braking forces and increase propulsive forces. So increase those vertical propulsive forces, but minimize the horizontal braking forces by getting that foot backwards.